Discover the Source, your gateway to United Methodist Agency resources. Every issue of this biweekly e-newsletter gathers articles, tools, and inspiration from across the denomination to support your ministry and mission. Subscribe at resourceumc.org today. Every call to serve invites both courage and questions. For Kim and Pat Lewis, that call is taking them from Montana to Mexico, where they've been commissioned as missionaries through the General Board of Global Ministries. After deep discernment, the Lewises are prepared for a new chapter, one rooted not in tasks, but in relationships that transform. Hi, this is Crystal Cavanis. I'm your host with Get Your Spirit in Shape, and I'm here today with Reverend Pat Lewis and his spouse, Kim Lewis. Welcome, Pat and Kim.
Thank
Hi.
you.
Well, we're going to talk about a new adventure for the two of you, and that is that you have been commissioned as missionaries to Mexico through the General Board of Global Ministries. And you're going to be leaving to your home in Montana to go to Mexico this summer. But before we dive into that conversation, can you both share a little bit about yourselves?
Well, I'm Kim. I became a deaconess with the United Methodist Church about 3 years ago, and I have spent the majority of my career in the nonprofit sector serving people in the margins through homelessness, those that are medically fragile, and people that just need a hand up, not a hand out. So, blending my ministry and my professional work has been one of my greatest joys in my life.
Yeah, and I'm Pat, and Kim and I met at a Habitat for Humanity conference out in Los Angeles, and we really, truly have always been in service with each other and into the world. And it was Habitat that kind of was a springboard for me, although I knew all along that I was going to be doing something like this. But yeah, we're both servers, and we both enjoyed the heck out of what we're doing.
And Pat, you are currently serving the United Methodist Church in Montana. Do you want to tell us about that?
I'm the senior pastor at Billings First United Methodist Church here in Billings, Montana. We've been called to a number of different places. I've been in Denver, Salt Lake, Northwest Colorado, up here with the church doing the ministry. And currently we're serving a medium-sized church up here it's actually the largest church in Montana. It's an exciting spot to be, and Montana is a beautiful place to serve.
It sure is. And you mentioned Los Angeles, and I'm going to just take a minute to just share with our audience that Kim and our friendship goes back to, I don't know, late 80s, early 90s, when we both lived in Los Angeles, worked together, and, we're friends. And then really just life took us in different paths and we lost touch. And this is the power of the United Methodist Connection. I was at the Mountain Sky Conference, annual conference, and Kim and Pat walked up, and I was like, oh my goodness. And we reconnected after, 20 years or so. It's a really special memory for me and then we've kept in touch more frequently through those past years. But I just love that we have reconnected, and I've loved watching both of you as your ministries have grown.
It's been awesome. And, friend, it's been probably 35 or 40 years. So
Okay.
let's stay young. But,
Math is not my forte. Everybody who listens to this podcast knows I'm English. It's English for me, not math. So you're right. Thank you for keeping me honest. Yeah. So I wanted, often when I have particularly pastors on the podcast, I'll ask about the call story. And so I want to talk to you about that, but kind of tell us briefly where you're going, who, kind of the ministry you'll be a part of. And then Kim, you and I have already talked about this. I've heard you talk about how you got to this space, and it's such a beautiful story that I would love to have our audience hear it too.
You bet. So we're going to be serving a United Methodist Church of Mexico sponsored nonprofit, that's a mouthful, called Give Ye Them to Eat. And it's based on Mark 6:37. And this organization has been in existence since 1977, founded by some global missionaries who saw a vision for a 40-acre farm in a vast deserty part of Mexico. And they felt very called to create a teaching farm. have it be a tool, an inspirational place where people could come to learn so they could take the info back to their villages so they can improve their lives. So the farm does things such as teaches people how to build straw bale homes, how to do dry composting toilets, solar ovens, things like that that improve their housing, but there's also a side that improves their livelihood that has to do with agriculture. So there are goats and sheep and chickens. So it feels a little bit heifer international-ish. So we teach them about animal husbandry and how could they actually make a living with some of the animals. There's also a tilapia farm. They are taught how to build a tilapia farm in their community.
And with that, on the call story side, about 25 years ago, I went out with Habitat for Humanity to an area that's about 100 kilometers from where we're going to be working. So we're really close by. And we were building houses. And part of that particular build was really connecting with the people and the land. And somebody asked me if I was happy there. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I was. And that kind of helped me regain a focus. And I promised that I would come back. I always knew I'd serve in ministry, and when we talk about call stories seriously from the time I was young, I've always felt connected to God, and felt like I was going to be doing something. When I met Kim, I actually told her. She said that I asked her what she wanted to do when she grew up, and she said swim with dolphins. And she asked me, and I said I'll either be the governor of Wyoming or I'll be a minister. And who knew we were going to end up in the ministry? And thank goodness we did. Uh, but here we are 25, almost 30 years later, and we're literally going back to this space where I felt so connected to God and doing what God was calling us to do. I have no idea how we got here, but we all along that way, we've just made steps to walk with God and be in this space.
Well, and to follow up on kind of our collaborative call story, years ago, before Pat had told me about his ministerial call story, but we really thought that Habitat was how we were destined to serve in that capacity. And but I had moved on, was working with another nonprofit, and was in the middle of a big gala that was super stressful. I came home one day from work and said to Pat, I think we should just sell everything, chuck it all, sell our house, and let's go on a mission. And he said, "Oh, I've got one better for you." And it just shows how God was kind of working in our lives. He said, "I want to do this permanently." And I'm like, "What does that mean?" I'm like, "I'm talking about a 2 week mission." I don't know why I thought we said we'd sell everything and go on a 2 week mission, but that was where my mindset was. Well, anyway, we kind of talked about it briefly. A day later, I come home and he is like a little kid at the door waiting to greet me. And he's like, "Guess what I did today?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "I enrolled in seminary." And he goes, "I don't want to do this just for a 2 week mission. I want to be in mission for the rest of our lives." And I said, "Oh my gosh." So anyway, that's what started our move from Phoenix to Denver. And but I said, "You know what? No matter what, I want to be able to go on missions or live out a missionary lifestyle." So that seed was planted for us about 20 years ago. And we've talked about it on and off. We've led youth, we've led mission teams to different places, both for stateside missions and most recently, we did a Belizean mission with our congregation. So part of this has just been a natural progression for us. We also have had a dream or an inspiration that we would eventually retire in a third world country. So the opportunity to become a global missionary is really that link and that glue to round out our career, because we're not completely ready for retirement, but it gets us to have that privilege of living and serving among the people, with the people. Uh, and maybe we'll stay in Mexico forever. Maybe we won't, but we're going to have 6 years exploring and figuring out how we can best serve them and love them and see what life brings.
For me, the big thing too was really a piece of that was I didn't want to go on a ministry that was just going to be a couple of weeks and then not make an impact on the world or on me. I mean, I'm selfish a little bit with that. It really felt like something that we'd go do something and then you chalk it up to, well, I've been there, done that type thing. I didn't want that. I wanted something that was going to serve God and leave an impression in some way. And so this feels like that's what this does. And we really do feel like this is a long-term service that's going to change us and hopefully the people that we're with. And we're praying that we can serve God and serve out something that's doing what God's calling us to.
As you were talking, as both of you were talking, I'm hearing that it's just this, I got this image of God planting seeds along the way and how they just have germinated and now they're, sprouting and coming into, really coming into fruition or coming into bloom and in such a beautiful way and a fulfillment, really, it seems, of what the purpose God's had for you all along, with you having a heart for mission and wanting to serve. And I definitely believe it's something that God has to put in your heart because it's hard. It's hard to go where there's another language spoken and it's not going to be the same type of day-to-day living that you're used to. I'm going to actually go out on a limb and tell you your quality of living is probably going to go up because you're going to be in this really beautiful place helping these beautiful people. But it will be different. So, Pat, I heard you talking about all the different things you're going to be doing, and Kim, you were too. But do y'all know how to do this stuff?
Yeah, you know what? A lot of this, I've had a really varied background, and so I grew up around ranching and grew up around farm and ranch life with people, and did a lot of manual work. When I worked with Habitat, we did a lot of building and construction, a lot of different things. I'll interrupt that though and say I did also spend almost 20 years in broadcasting, so my hands didn't get dirty for a while and really did some different stuff. But my life until the ministry really was varied, and I kind of bounced around from point to point to point, looking, I think, for how I was supposed to serve. And when I fell into it, Habitat was really the connection. When I fell into it, it just seemed right. And then since that point, I've really followed where God's opened doors and just moved through those spaces.
Yeah, and to follow up on that, from what we understand, there's about 200 global missionaries worldwide. So we're in a limited group of folks in the Methodist realm that are serving in this capacity. And we've also learned that there's not always a lot of couples that apply and serve together. So it's really amazing that through this process where we've been placed is a spot that works for both Pat and I for our skill sets.
Yeah, it really fits both of
So
us.
the other piece I forgot to mention about life on the farm, if you will, the whole other component is community health worker training. So there is lots of hands on living where females come from different villages for an 18-month program to be trained as a community health worker around not only basic things like first aid, diabetes management, and maybe basic dentistry, but also how do you take knowledge around social determinants of health, things like your environment, transportation, air quality, nutrition, all those sort of things to improve your life because knowledge is power, right? And so that's where I've spent the bulk of my career doing. So that just fell into a natural line for me. While I'm not a medical professional, I know how to find the people that can do the training. But on the flip side, um, my job also is to when we're down there is to work with the churches in America to help form mission teams who may or may not have a medical background, who may or may not have farming or agriculture background, but have a willing heart and want to come and learn and observe. And that is the big piece is connecting the mission to America, and I've done fundraising and communications throughout my whole career, so that kind of links the other two pieces together for me and my calling.
And again, it's just how God has put through all these experiences that you've had have really culminated in this point. Um, I know that you a few months ago you were in Uganda for the commissioning. I'd love for you to share about that experience because I don't know how many people who are in the United Methodist Church really understand how the missionary structure through the General Board of Global Ministries works. So maybe we can just have a kind of a missionary one-on-one moment.
Okay. Global missionaries and global fellows are two extensions of the United Methodist Ministry worldwide. Global fellows are younger and they serve 2-year terms, and global missionaries generally serve 3-year terms, but then they look for back to back terms wherever we can serve throughout the world. There are approximately 200 global missionaries throughout the world. We happen to be at a time and a space where there hadn't been a commissioning since COVID. So we had 23 of us gather together and work through commissioning.
So they pick a different place in the world
I was
each
gonna, I
year.
was gonna mention that.
So it
Yeah,
happened to be Uganda this
yeah.
year, where we had the privilege of going for 2 weeks for training and commissioning.
Yeah, we were blown away. We brought people from all over the world to come in, and we were 2 of 4 Americans that were there. Everybody else was literally from everywhere else in the world, serving everywhere in the world, and everybody has. The thing that was so surprising is we do so many different things throughout the world, everything from healthcare to agriculture and development to water, helping people get wells and how to deliver water in communities and in agriculture areas that can be more efficient, building houses, building communities, sign language and language advancement throughout the world.
For
Just
Bible interpretation too,
amazing
which is
stuff.
cool.
Yeah, yeah. Lots of wonderful stuff with just growing churches as well as growing communities.
So you really it sounds like you had an opportunity to see the United Methodist Church is a worldwide church. We're, all around the world. And it feels like when you were in Uganda, you had a chance to kind of see into that. How did that change the way you feel about being United Methodist?
We went to Belize the year before to go on vacation, and we met. Kim decided we were looking at the idea of becoming global ministers, and Kim decided we really need to kind of investigate this. And we started checking around Belize, and we found a global minister in Belize who had conversation with us, Charles. And Charles was like a sharp pointed pencil in a line. I mean, every time we take a step forward, he'd be right behind us, kind of nudging us forward a little more.
Mhm.
And he told us we should really investigate this and look at it. So, looking at the world through the lens of what we knew as Methodism, it changed completely. And suddenly we were really seeing so much more humanity and so much more of what we do as a church worldwide. It was phenomenal.
I think also back to Uganda, clearly it's different demographics and economic status, and the joy in people's faces and seeing God in the faces of those that have what we might consider through an American lens less than what we would need to live a comfortable lifestyle. The reality is, within a couple weeks that we were there, I started to see that they had more than we had. They had more joy, more family, more cultural connection with what little they had. And yes, they appreciate every bit of help and hand up. But I would argue folks in a third world country might be more fulfilled and have a better connection with God and to the earth and with each other, because the American lifestyle has kind of just blasted all that out, and we forget at our core what are the real important things in
Yeah,
life.
there was definitely a richness throughout the
Mhm.
world. Yeah.
I agree with you. And been to Kenya several times and in a kind of a mission capacity. And the first time I came back, I just kind of coined this phrase, the light behind the eyes.
Right.
And I just saw that in everyone. There was this light behind their eyes, and it just radiated out of them. And that felt like the definition of joy. And they had no doubt that it was from God.
Well, and I think the other piece for me, and this has been a Lenten piece for me for this period of time, was giving thanks for fresh water that I could drink out of the faucet. I know that sounds so minimal, but to realize the gifts that we have at such a basic level, we really just don't understand how different it is worldwide until we step into those spaces and see. And yeah,
Mhm.
a little thing like water, what a gift, and what an amazing gift. And it's been really humbling to see that.
The other thing was a couple of times after a few of the church services when we were out in the really rural, remote villages, to be served what I believe to be a very extravagant meal that the locals put together to honor and celebrate our commissioning. It probably was a week's worth of food, maybe a month's. I have no idea. It was extravagant in their terms, with the amount of food, the type of food, but the pride that they shared and the love when they're like serving the goat stew or a different version of squash
Yeah.
presented because they have very limited resources. Their resources are either their goats or their cows or the veggies. There's nothing processed. There's no fast food place. But anyway, they did it with such love. I mean, that truly is that fulfillment of feeding a stranger, right? And give you them to eat. I mean, you're giving it of your heart and your soul. But when we turned the corner so that of this church and we went around to the other side, they weren't eating the same thing that they fed us. They were eating millet. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's all they had. Clearly, they had given everything to treat those of us going through the commissioning very special. And I appreciate they gave it their heart because when through that American lens, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I wouldn't have eaten that if I knew they were just having the millet. I would have rather have seen them have that. But there was so much love and joy in that serving of food. It really filled up my soul.
Let's take a moment out of our conversation with Pat and Kim to talk about apportionments. Let's be honest, when you hear the word apportionments, you might think, is that just a church budget thing? We get it. It sounds like accounting. But here's the truth, it's actually a story of ministry, mission, and multiplication. Apportioned giving is how your small offering becomes part of something much bigger. That means supporting churches in underserved communities. That means funding seminaries, hospitals, and disaster response teams. That means reaching people you may never meet, but who know God's love because of you. It's not about how much, it's about all of us showing up together. You're part of a church that is united in impact. That's a story worth sharing and a story worth being part of. It starts with you and your faithful generosity. We are the people of the United Methodist Church, and together we are united in impact. Visit resourceumc.org/united in impact to learn more. My hope, Kim and Pat, is that a couple years into being in Mexico, I have you back as guest, and you can say, we can have, okay, 2 years later, this is what this has looked like. I think that would be really exciting to have you back to kind of recount that. But I feel like there's probably already been some transformation for you. Can you share with what it's just meant for you personally in your faith walk to have made this decision and you're learning about it and now you're just weeks away from going?
You bet. First of all, we've been discerning this for a long time, and there is
Since we
also
met.
since we met, pretty much right. But officially, we've probably spent the last year discerning it with several different books, and there's actually a discernment worksheet on GBGM's website that took us about 3 months to get through. And we really took it seriously. We each studied on our own. We'd come back together and have discussions and see where God was working in us together and whatnot, and or where our fears and concerns were, and how would we give that to God. And so as we progressed, this is kind of where we feel like we're at. So we're about 6 weeks out. So it's like, hey, have you ever played that game where God says, sell and give away everything and move to a foreign country where you don't speak the language and go live on a farm? And where's the instructions? There are no instructions except giving it to God. So to poke a little fun at myself, but this is really serious. I thought it was a very serious beginning. So you're talking about transformational stuff. As soon as we got our call and our assignment, my brain, as the CEO of an American nonprofit, immediately goes to all the logistical and financial management questions of running this organization. And I just start typing away questions and questions, and they're just automatically numbering. And it ends up being 67 questions. And Pat is saying, "Don't send that. Don't send that. You're gonna freak them out." I'm like, "I need to know exactly what I'm getting into. Don't you wonder about these things? I need, just anything from what do we pack, where are we living,
What's the structure of the board?
where's the board structure? How does one make a donation? Who does staff evaluations? I mean, who feeds the cows, right? I mean, or the goats? I had so many questions, and Pat kept saying, "Don't send it, don't send it." I'm like, "Send." So I sent it to the gentleman who is also a global missionary, but his job as a global missionary is to manage the Mexico, Latin America, and South American global missionaries that are deployed in service. And he wrote something, and it was days before I heard back. And he wrote something back when he finally responded and said, "You have stressed me out. I do not have the answers." And Pat's like, "I told you so. You should have sent that." So a couple days go by, and he sends us a Zoom invitation. So we're meeting with him, and Pat and I were praying right before that. And Pat's like, "Just be chill. You have stressed this guy out. It doesn't matter what the answers are." And so he says, "You only have one job, Kim." And I'm like, "What is it?" Like, I'm all geared up. And he goes, "You just need to be."
Mm.
And I'm like,
Oh.
"Be what?" Like, I'm just like so excited and I want to hear it. He's like, "Be, be with the people, be with the culture, be with God, walk to a park, go to a church, go to a carniceria, meet the people, live with them." And so I kind of joked because of my personality. I said, "Oh, that's awesome. But what do we do? That's the afternoon after we get there. And then what?" And he's like, "No, for 6 weeks at least, I expect you just to be. That's your job." And I thought that was just so beautiful because God's already working. God's doing exactly what he needs to do. I don't need to worry about any of those 67 questions. And actually, it's brought us especially me, such amazing peace that this is God's mission, not ours. And it's going to unfold the way it's supposed to be. And wherever we're supposed to live is where we will live. Wherever we buy a car or get our driver's license, all the weird little things. The focus isn't on that. Who cares? Those are just tasks. The focus is on the people. And that's just been really transformational for me. And folks who ask us about our trip, or we say trip, but about the move, we're really at peace with it. Like, we don't know. Our biggest answer is, and it feels very empowering to say, we don't know, but God does. We'll figure it out as we go.
Yeah, and Kim's actually hit it on the head. Part of, I think, the transformation for me has been God is already there. We understand that, and we're going to serve God's mission. We don't know what that is, and that's the discomforting piece. But for me, it's so much of what the change in our life has been around the routines, around the stuff and the things. People don't understand, and I'll be really sincere. I'm not sure I understand, but we're reducing our entire life to 5 suitcases each that we'll take with us, mostly clothing, and we're not even sure what clothing to take. So, in a lot of ways, we are living out the command from Jesus to take your bags and sandals and walk out the door and trust that people are going to take care of you. And so we're going to do that. We're going to walk out the door and trust that people are going to take care of us. Um, I think leaving behind the order of what I know. So, and the comparison has been the garage. And I laugh at this because most people will be able to associate with this. You know, you walk into the kitchen, you know where the forks are. You walk into the garage, you know where the wrenches are. You know, you know where the stuff is that you need. I don't. Right now, we have a few things that are left in the house that I can walk to and say, that's where that is. And the rest of it is either gone, and so much of it is gone, or it's moved. And that, while it is uncomfortable, it is not disquieting. We know that God's working with that. So that's been a big transformation, I think, for both of us.
I love that. And I'm just going to go back, Kim. I No wonder I love you so much. We are just made out of the same cloth. I too would have 67 questions.
Yeah.
And you had shared that with me before when we had spoken about, and I'm so grateful that you shared it again, because it is just really beautiful to be reminded, just be. And I had a pastor say to me one time, Jesus says, I am, not I do.
Right.
Yes.
And so I just, it's just such a good reminder to just remember that that's what we're called to be, is, or just be. And I'm just such a doer. I just want to keep
Yeah.
doing.
So when I kind of meditate on just being, what keeps coming through in my mind is, it is well with my soul,
Mm,
or be still and know that I'm God. Both of
yes.
those things, kind of rotate back and forth. But the other thing, when you're talking about doing, especially Americans, we feel like if we don't accomplish a to-do list, or if we don't accomplish our job description, or whatever it is set out, what we believe is task oriented to accomplish, that we haven't done God's will. Maybe. But I was as we went through our missionary training, it's not about doing. It's not even about accomplishing. How many straw houses did you build? How many, people did you train about diabetes management? How many, whatever. It's actually just about being with the people. That was one thing that the training really drove home to us, that you don't have to accomplish everything. It's about being. So if I could tell one little story about our recent Belizean mission trip, one of our primary jobs was to renovate a home that sat on school/church property that would be used for a teacher to have housing, because they had a shortage of teachers. And we had a couple of folks on our team that actually work in the construction industry and were very driven and focused. And they were really in the forefront of making that work happen. And when we were debriefing after about the fifth day, and we realized we would not finish the house, we would not complete it because we had had a multitude of delays, one of the gentlemen said, I just feel so inadequate leaving a project unfinished. And that kind of became a lighthearted joke, that how can we all be at peace with leaving Belize with an unfinished project, even though we gave it our all. But the cool thing that was happening right off to the side while a lot of people were building, the school kids would come over, and we were doing some vacation Bible school crafts and activities. So kind of what happened all at once, there's some kids that are hanging around with us, and this little boy was probably 12 or 14. He was waiting for his mom to pick him up because he was going to the state spelling bee competition that afternoon, and he was super nervous and super excited. Well, it turns out his mom was the one that had just brought us these amazing chicken tamales. And so she was picking him up from school, and we just surrounded him in prayer. And we were so excited, and we couldn't wait to hear. Well, he placed second place. The next day, he comes back, and we're just cheering and exciting, or we're excited for him. And that actually became more important, that he placed in the spelling bee and we were with him than finishing the church and or finishing the build of the house. It was about being with that kiddo and
Yeah.
raising up his family. And we're all so proud of that. Like, even when our group reconvenes, we're like, wasn't that just the coolest? We have a picture of us with him holding his trophy. That was just a neat memory for me.
Well, and I'd extend that. This man brought along his teenage son who was with us, and neither of them had been out of Montana in their lifetimes. And so both of them went to Belize with us, and both of them were on this project. And so one's kind of the construction supervisor running the project, and his 17-year-old son. And his 17-year-old son kept being invited to play with the kids there. And we looked over the next afternoon after the spelling bee and hear both father and son playing with these kids, just building a relationship. And it was just so beautiful to see them growing a relationship even greater than what they already had. So really, the building was not what we were there for.
It's the being with the people,
Yeah.
which is exactly what you've been, been sharing. That's really, that is beautiful. Well, as we finish up today, is there anything you wanted to share that we haven't yet talked about?
I have one thing I wanted to share about the inspiration of the founding of Give Ye Them to Eat. It really has moved me. It's based on an old Chinese proverb, and this is what we have read that inspired the original missionaries that decided to build a farm down south of Puebla. And it says, "Go to the people, learn from them, live with them, start with what they know." Build with what they have. The best of leaders, when the job is done, when the task is accomplished, the people will say, "We have done it ourselves." And that's just so beautiful. And that's what Pat and I are so thrilled and excited that we get to go on behalf of God and empower folks to be able to say, "We've done this ourselves."
Yes, and I'll definitely link on the episode page to the Give Them Ye to Eat, the website, so people can learn more. And even, is there a way that if they wanted to support, how could someone support the two of you in your mission work?
You bet. We both have advance numbers that you can find on the umcmission.org website, or we could share that with you. Or you could go to Give Ye Them to Eat, either the website, or follow us on Facebook, and there's links there if people chose to want to make a donation.
Great. Well, we'll definitely put all that on the episode page so that folks can be and follow along too. It sounds like you'll maybe be documenting as you go along the journey and the mission.
Yeah.
And so tonight, now I'm going to ask you the question that we ask all of our guests on Get Your Spirit in Shape, and I'd love to hear how each of you keep your own spirits in shape.
I find, I mean, besides traditional things, prayer, meditation, giving praise to God, that for me, I see God mostly in nature. So for me to be able to get outside, or even yesterday driving home, just an amazing full rainbow after a rainstorm, and just having a conversation with God and seeing that in nature, or putting my feet in the grass, or touching a leaf, or whatever it is. I just really enjoy a connection in nature to keep my spirit kind of grounded, and that's meaningful to me.
And for me, it's looking for Jesus in each one of us. And I try to see a little Jesus in each day, and focus on that for me, and give thanks for just the presence of God in others. So, yeah.
That's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for coming and talking to us about what you're getting ready to do in Mexico, and just really sharing with us, from your heart about that experience. I'm so excited for both of you, and really am so proud of you listening to God and following the call. And I know it's going to be a really beautiful experience.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Crystal.
There are so many ways to support us, and you ask about the financial piece, but honestly, the spiritual piece and the prayerful piece, we would really appreciate those that are tuning in and listening to raise us and the ministry that we're getting ready to go do in prayer. That means a lot to us.
It does.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you again for being our guest.
Blessings.
you.
Thank you.
That was the Reverend Pat Lewis and Kim Lewis, a deaconess in the United Methodist Church, discussing their upcoming move to Mexico to serve as missionaries with the General Board of Global Ministries. To learn more, go to umc.org/podcast and look for this episode, where you'll find helpful links and a transcript of our conversation. If you have questions or comments, feel free to email me at a special email address just for Get Your Spirit in Shape listeners, gysis@umcom.org. If you enjoyed today's episode, we invite you to leave a review on the platform where you get your podcast. Thank you for being a Get Your Spirit in Shape listener. I'm Crystal Cavanis, and I look forward to the next time that we're together. Today's episode of Get Your Spirit in Shape has been partially sponsored by The Source. Support your ministry and mission with The Source. This bi-weekly e-newsletter brings you articles and resources from across the denomination, all to empower United Methodist leaders like you. Subscribe now at resourceumc.org.